Do you want to know one simple way to overcome ED and SAD, sexual arousal dysfunction, as quickly as possible? Are you wondering if there is a simple way, then why haven't I been able to do it yet? I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, brain health and sex addiction recovery coach. Today, I want to share with you how neuroplasticity works to address the underlying core reason that you struggle with erectile dysfunction. Once you know that reason and you have the tools, technology, and techniques, it is very simple to come back from sexual arousal dysfunction. Let's dig in. Let's start with what causes erectile dysfunction. When many people begin to struggle with sexual arousal dysfunction, they will go to their urologist, they will go to their physician, and many times this comes with very little help. For most people, that becomes futile. That's because they're looking in the wrong area of the body for the problem. The problem isn't below the belt. The problem is above the collar. Yep, your brain. You might not realize, but arousal starts in your brain. This is where testosterone's made. This is where the electrical energy can hit the sweet spot of relaxed and aroused simultaneously. But it's imperative that your brain is working in a healthy, underlying baseline arousal performance pattern. If your brain is using any level of dysfunction, then sexual arousal will be difficult or impossible. So, what causes the most dysfunction in a brain to make it so that arousal is difficult or impossible? You guessed it, pornography. We know from many studies, but from a few recent ones especially, that young men are experiencing erectile dysfunction and SAD, sexual arousal dysfunction, more than ever. In a recent study, it showed that 1 in 4 men had erectile dysfunction, and when they gave up pornography, they were able to overcome it fairly quickly. In another study, it was shown that 46% of men, young men, struggled with ED, opposed to a much lower number of men who abstain from pornography in the first place. And again, in another study, over 50% of young men who struggle with erectile dysfunction were able to go back to the thought that it was their pornography habit that was at the core of it because there were no other physical issues at play. If you want to read about these studies, go over to drtrishleigh.com, check out the blog post, the link that's attached, so you can see these studies are true. There's many more of them. We know that erectile dysfunction, ED, and SAD are more prevalent than ever, and it's because of porn. Now, let me tell you why. Pornography disrupts the pleasure pathways in the brain. Basically, your brain becomes linked to high levels of dopamine from a very unhealthy source, pornography. That source is sexual in nature. Now, dopamine isn't always sexual in nature, but for people who watch porn, it gets linked to very high level sexuality. So, if you think of this logically, someone with a gambling habit doesn't watch porn. Their dopamine pathways have been linked to gambling. That's where they get the most pleasure and the most dopamine. Alcoholics get the most pleasure from alcohol. Drug addicts get the most pleasure from their drug of choice. Pornography consumption becomes a behavioral addiction. It is the proverbial downward spiral. Now, the way that it affects your sexual function is that now your brain is linked to very high levels of dopamine to become aroused sexually. Now you go back and you're trying to have a nice sexual experience with your honey in your real life, but your real life pleasure pathways have been dulled. They're dulled because your brain needs a lot of dopamine to feel aroused, but your partner can never give your brain as much dopamine as porn and explicit matter. It's a conundrum of sorts. But when you leave pornography behind, the pleasure pathways in your brain reset, and then you can reestablish them and relink them to healthy sexuality among other pleasurable experiences in your life. So we know pornography creates what I call hypersexuality. Your brain is going back to sexuality for dopamine. That we want to unlink, and we want your brain to go back to your life and build a toolbox of many different tools for pleasure, happiness, and connection. Okay, so How do we do this? There are techniques that are called neuromodulation techniques, and they capitalize on neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's inherent changeability. Now, your brain can change, but it doesn't mean that it always improves. Your brain has changed to need and to be dependent on pornography. That's because of its neuroplasticity. But unfortunately, neuroplasticity can be your worst enemy if you keep feeding it in the wrong direction. When you stop watching porn and you use neuroplasticity as your best friend, linking it back into your life, that's how we can reset those pleasure pathways in your brain. How do you do it? We can use neuromodulation techniques. So there's two very powerful neuromodulation techniques. One requires technology, the other requires just your mind. And I will tell you, the one with technology tends to be easier and more powerful for people. And I know from working with thousands of people who are overcoming erectile dysfunction, they have urgency on restoring sexual function as fast as possible. Technology helps in that department. So this is how it works. Meditation is a technology-free type of neuromodulation. What it means is when you have a meditation practice, you're guiding the electrical energy pattern of your brain from the overcharged sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, anxious mode, and from the undercharged, tired, fatigued mode. And in meditation, you're bringing it back towards the middle. So it helps a wired and tired brain become calmer and more focused. It takes a practice and it takes time, and you're reinforcing these pathways with every meditation experience. Meditation can be very difficult for people who are stuck way out here in what I call strained brain. Strained brain is something that I can visualize on QEEG brain mapping, which is the first step when someone wants to work with me. It's an assessment that I perform. It's an evaluation. I can see if your brain is using the dysfunctional pattern, strained brain, wired and tired, that makes your brain very far away from healthy baseline arousal. If your brain is using high levels of dysfunction in many areas, it can be very challenging to use meditation, and it is what's at the core of SAD and ED. So now there's technology. And with the wonders of neuroplasticity that capitalizes on advanced technology and neuroscience, there's tech that can basically teach your brain to make less of the wired and tired and bring it back towards those medium speeds of calm focus. So what it does is it brings you out of sympathetic dominance, and it helps you to get more into a parasympathetic rest and digest state. Like I've already said, your brain has to be relaxed enough to be able to become aroused, stimulated enough to become aroused, and relaxed and stimulated enough to be able to move through a healthy sexual experience for pleasure, happiness, joy, and connection. So your brain, it can't be here in its electrical energy pattern. It has to be here for you to no longer suffer from erectile dysfunction or sexual arousal dysfunction of any kind. The technology, neurofeedback, does that. It closes the gap for you. And all you have to do is do sessions using the technology. It's kind of like a workout for your brain. Your brain is a muscle, just like your biceps, just like your quads, just like any other muscle in your brain. If you exercise it with the proper amount of feedback or tension, if you will, just like weights, your brain can become stronger. It is a much more simple, easy, and effective way to close the gap so you no longer suffer or struggle from erectile dysfunction. It capitalizes on neuroplasticity and neuromodulation. If you're interested in learning about that technology, go on over to drtrishleigh.com. What can you do in the meantime? Start your meditation practice and recognize that if you have a porn habit, even if it's one time a week, it is reinforcing the pleasure pathways away from your sex life into the screen. It's part of the problem. It's desensitizing the dopamine receptors in your reward center and reward pathways. Desensitization must come to a stop. Resensitization must be revitalized and reinvigorated back into your life and back into your sex life. Now, this can be very difficult if you're not using technology. So just to remind you, when I give people the strategies I'm about to give you, they are using the advanced technology neurofeedback within the program that I offer. They're guiding their brain back to healthy arousal. Then on top of that, they are practicing more delayed gratification of arousal. What porn has taught your brain is that you can get instant gratification by hitting a button and shifting your brain into artificial neutral to feel good. Unfortunately, if you do that too much, your brain stays stuck in artificial neutral, which makes it difficult for you to become aroused. Part of the solution is reteaching your brain back in your life to have smaller wins towards a bigger success in terms of pleasure. That can be in all departments of your life and especially in sexuality. So when you're with your partner, take your time to become aroused. Take your time to have her or him become aroused too. Enjoy the experience. Porn has taught you that sex is a performance. It's not a performance, it's an experience that's supposed to be pleasurable, but also enjoyable. Joy. So take time in building pleasure. It's going to help to reset those pleasure pathways while you're not desensitizing them. That is the way to reinvigorate those pleasure pathways back into your life. At the same time, get pleasure from all the places in your life that maybe you've been foregoing. Your hobbies, work that you love, hanging out with people that make you laugh and you enjoy being with, and especially having intimacy and healthy sexuality with your partner. Relink your brain back into your life. Now, this is a simple solution to overcome ED, but it might not be an easy one for you. If you're finding it incredibly difficult to leave explicit matter behind, and that includes hypersexual behaviors of all kinds. If you can't stay out of the screen or you can't stay away from hypersexuality, please go over to drtrishleigh.com and I offer an amazing digital program that's built on science. When I put it together, I felt like my life's work has culminated in a way to be able to help people to not only leave porn behind, but to get back on purpose in their lives and to heal their relationships. So please go on over, check out that digital program. And for the month of December, I'm running a promotion, Commit to Quit. Drop a red X below if you're ready to commit. And if you're truly ready, get into that program using coupon code COMMIT100. It'll take $100 off of that program so you can succeed right now. Now is the time to use neuroplasticity, neuroscience, neurofeedback if you're up for it, or your mind and body within that digital program. One more thing about the digital program is I teach you how to use neurofeedback at the entry level. It's more affordable. So if you want to know how to use the tech that's much more affordable, get into that program. I'm going to teach you how to do it. If you want to have a QEEG brain map done with me, please sign up for it so you can see where the dysfunction in your brain is and how it's contributing to your ED and SAD. All right. I hope this helps you out. And until next time, control your brain or it'll control you.